The night everything changed wasn't the night the headlines dropped. It was 4 months earlier. 4 months before TMZ, CNN, and gossip blogs exploded with breaking news. Before the footage leaked, before the silence cracked. It began in a dim corner of the Beverly Hills Hotel. Diddy, or as the world knew him, Sean Combs, wasn't his usual magnetic self that night. No champagne in hand, no loud laughter, no crowd orbiting his presence. He sat alone, staring at the fireplace in a private lounge reserved for high rollers, as if it held the answer to a question that had been hunting him for years. The waitress, new to the game, didn't recognize him immediately. She asked if he wanted anything, and he looked up, eyes hollow, and said, "Just water." Water, for a man whose brand screamed excess. That was the first clue. But no one was watching. Not yet. Back in New York, a sealed brown envelope had been dropped at the foot of a young, investigative journalist named Jaleesa Hart. No name, no return address. Just the words, "You want a real story. Follow the money, not the music." Jaleesa had been waiting for her break. She was tired of TikTok gossip reels and listicles. This was real. It felt dangerous, and that's what made it irresistible. Inside the envelope, a flight manifest, an unedited video still, a contract, and a name she didn't expect to see, Diddy. The manifest showed a private jet from Antigua to a discreet airstrip in Miami. The timestamp matched a date when Diddy was supposedly at a Grammy pre-party in LA. Something was off. She started digging. Every call she made hit a wall. Every email got no reply. Then one night, her laptop lit up with an unknown IP and a chilling message appeared. "You're close. He's not who you think he is, but neither are they." She stared at the screen, heart pounding. She typed one word, "Who?" No response. The next morning, Jaleesa walked into the WNYC newsroom with the envelope, clutched under her coat like it was a ticking bomb. She didn't trust anyone yet, not even her editor. She sat at her cubicle, plugged in her encrypted drive, and started combing through flight databases, financial reports, and social media timestamps. Piece by piece, she unraveled a mystery that was never meant to be found. Every detail she uncovered scratched the surface of something much darker than celebrity gossip. This wasn't about a cheating scandal or backstage drama. This was big, global money movement, shell companies in the Caymans, private trips unrecorded, names redacted, files marked confidential. Diddy wasn't just an artist. He was a gatekeeper, and someone, somewhere, wanted that gate kicked open. She wasn't the only one digging. Miles away, in a cold, windowless building in downtown Miami, a man known only as Roddy stared at 3 screens. One showed security footage of a warehouse near the Everglades, men moving crates at 3 a.m. Another screen showed financial ledgers filled with offshore activity. And the last was paused on an image of Diddy, stepping out of a jet wearing a gray hoodie and dark shades. The same hoodie from the photo in Jaleesa's envelope. Roddy was ex-NSA, kicked out after whistleblowing on a surveillance op. Now he worked freelance, and someone had paid him $500,000 to track inconsistencies in Diddy's travel logs. He thought it was a joke at first, but the more he dug, the more nervous he got, because there was no reason a music mogul needed the kind of cover Diddy had. Encrypted calls, backdoor entries, shadow escorts. It didn't fit the profile of a man known for parties and press. Then came the warehouse discovery. Roddy followed a paper trail from Combs Global to a front called Silver Tide Logistics. Its only purpose? Cargo routing. But the cargo wasn't music equipment or champagne bottles. It was unmarked boxes, dozens of them, being moved under heavy guard. And one box had a custom stamp from a country currently under international scrutiny. Roddy sent a ping to Jaleesa's burner email. Subject line, same target. She read it, then watched the attached video. It was grainy, but clear enough. A man Diddy handing off a package to a woman in a silk robe aboard a yacht. The timestamp was exactly 36 minutes after he had supposedly walked the red carpet at a charity gala in LA. The timeline was broken, the alibi fake, and the woman, a known associate of an arms broker flagged by Interpol. Still, none of this was enough to go public. It was shaky, speculative, dangerous. But then the housekeeper came forward. Anonymous, distressed, paranoid. She claimed to have worked in Diddy's Los Angeles home for 5 years. Said she saw things, heard things, sometimes even cleaned blood off things. But the worst, she whispered in a trembling voice, was the room no one enters. A room behind a locked door in the basement, hidden. There's a code, she said. He changes it every week. What's inside? Jaleesa asked, recording without letting it show. A chair, with belts, cameras, a vault, and sounds. Sounds like screaming. but never from him. The room was supposedly soundproof, but late at night, she heard muffled cries through the vents. That was when Jaleesa knew this wasn't just about money. This was about power, control, and secrets protected by the kind of people who don't leave loose ends. The very next day, news broke that a former bodyguard for Diddy had been found dead in a motel room in Nevada. No foul play, authorities said, overdose, but his family swore he never touched drugs. Jaleesa recognized the name. The bodyguard had worked for Diddy for over a decade until he was abruptly let go last year. His departure was never publicized. She reached out to the man's cousin. After much convincing and a promise to blur out everything, he agreed to share some texts. The last message the bodyguard sent was one word: run. That's when she started noticing the van, parked across the street from her building, headlights off. It didn't move for 2 nights, and then her phone buzzed while she slept. An anonymous voice note: "You're in way too deep. This isn't your story to tell." She forwarded the audio to Roddy, who ran voice pattern analysis. The results sent chills through them both. The voice belonged to a man tied to a private intelligence firm, one that had contracts with the Department of Defense and a long history of cleanup operations. Jaleesa was being watched. She booked a motel under a fake name and left her apartment with only her laptop and the original envelope. It was time to go underground. Roddy pulled strings and found her a place in Austin, Texas, a safe house used by activists and journalists during whistleblower cases. There, she wrote, every piece of the puzzle came together into a timeline that no longer made sense. Diddy's rise to fame, his iron grip on his empire, the silence of victims, the NDAs, the missing people, all of it reeked of something engineered, something dangerous, something designed not just to entertain the masses, but to manipulate the system. Then the drive arrived. No return address, just a USB, wrapped in black cloth, with a sticky note that said, "Leak this, and you're dead." Roddy scanned the drive using an air-gapped machine. No malware, just one video file. They played it. It started with Diddy sitting across from a man whose face was blurred. The audio was scratchy but understandable. "You know the rules," the man said. "I've played your game," Diddy replied. "But I'm done. You don't get to be done. Not after everything we covered for you." Diddy leaned forward, voice steady. "Then expose me. But when I go down, I take everyone with me, starting with you." The screen went black. Jaleesa looked at Roddy. Roddy looked at her. "Blackmail," she whispered. "This goes way deeper than him," Roddy said. "He's not the puppet master. He's the puppet with scissors." Suddenly, it made sense why the timeline didn't add up. Why witnesses vanished. Why people were too scared to talk. Diddy wasn't running the show. He was trying to escape it. But someone higher up wanted him to stay inside. They were both trapped. Predator and prey in the same cage. And now, the lock was rattling. Jaleesa made the call. The story had to go live. But before she could send it off, everything froze. Her screen turned white. Then a message appeared. "System compromised. Your location is known." She shut the laptop and ran. But when she burst out of the door into the empty street, a black car was already waiting. 2 men stepped out. No words, just a signal. She dropped the drive into a sewer grate and screamed. One of the men reached for her, then headlights. A truck barreled down the street and clipped one of the men. Roddy jumped out from behind the wheel, firing a flare gun into the air. "Get in." They drove for hours. No GPS, no phones. When they finally stopped, it was on a ranch in New Mexico. A friend of Roddy's who owed him a favor. It was there Jaleesa uploaded the story to a hidden server, protected by layers of encryption. The story went live at midnight. Within an hour, everything exploded. News networks scrambled. The public was in disbelief. Some called it fake. Others connected dots to long ignored. Within 24 hours, Diddy's team denied everything. Lawyers filed injunctions. Social media platforms were served takedown notices. But the story was out, and then he vanished. Diddy was scheduled to appear at a public event in Dubai. He never arrived. CCTV footage from the hotel showed him walking out through a back exit and disappearing. No passport activity, no digital trail, just gone. To this day, no one knows where he is. Some say he cut a deal and entered a protection program. Others say he was silenced forever. But Roddy and Jaleesa, they survived. Barely. They changed names, moved cities, and every now and then, a brown envelope shows up at a random doorstep. No note, no explanation, just a reminder. The game never ends. Only the players do. 2 months later, Jaleesa was working under the name Dana Knox, living in a low-key suburb of Lisbon, Portugal. It wasn't glamorous. It was barely safe, but she could breathe. Most days she worked in silence. watching shadows move across her apartment floor with more suspicion than curiosity. She never turned on location services, never used the same cafe twice, never used public Wi-Fi. But even in hiding, she kept writing, chronicling everything she couldn't publish, until one cold evening in February, when she found something strange taped to her door. A Polaroid photo. It showed Roddy standing at a port, alone. The back read, "Clock's ticking." She hadn't heard from him in weeks. The last message had been a strange voice note where he said, "If I disappear, it means I found what they didn't want us to see. And if you get the photo, don't run dig." So she did. Jaleesa accessed the dark web forum they used for encrypted comms. Nothing. She opened a backup laptop and loaded the drive Roddy had handed her the night of the escape. Inside was a zip file with a 512-digit passcode prompt and one file labeled "Not Diddy." She sat there for hours trying everything: coordinates, phone numbers, key phrases. Nothing worked. Then she remembered something. Diddy once said in an old interview, "The devil's in the details, but the truth is always in the beat." The beat. She played the audio clip of Diddy's last public performance before his disappearance, one where he remixed one of his earliest hits. Inside that song, at minute 43, was a stutter in the beat, barely noticeable. She slowed it down. The waveform looked strange. It wasn't audio. It was Morse code. Translated, it read, "Trust nitrogen monoxide system. Open at 1840. She entered 1840 into the password field. The zip cracked open. Inside were multiple folders. One titled Comms, one Ops, and one called The Switch. Each folder was packed with surveillance footage, voice recordings, financial statements, and something else. A single name kept popping up: Julian Sachs. Sachs wasn't a name known to the public, but in the intelligence world, he was a ghost story rumored to be the architect of massive information warfare operations, with ties to private governments, secret societies, and even celebrity PR management. The files showed Sachs communicating not just with Diddy but with over a dozen high-profile entertainers and political figures. They were all connected through a shell company, Orpheus Protocol. What did Orpheus do? Control.narratives.scandals.success. Every viral moment, every cancelled artist, every comeback story, it all traced back to them. Roddy had found their back-end server trail, and it linked to a secret compound outside Vail de Bravo, Mexico. Jaleesa booked a one-way flight. She went in as a tourist, stayed in a cheap hostel, then hiked out at dawn toward the GPS coordinates buried in the file. What she found didn't look like a compound. It looked like a film set. Guard booths disguised as prop shacks, cameras disguised as wind turbines, and people wearing earpieces, carrying slates that didn't say Scene 1 or Take 3, but said in 1, short for Narrative 1. She pulled out her phone and quietly filmed everything. But as she zoomed in, someone walked out of the cabin, tall, hooded, and limping. Her stomach flipped. It was Diddy. He was alive. He didn't look like himself. Gone was the bravado, the swag. He looked gaunt, hollow. A man either broken or pretending. She held her breath and filmed him, walking to a small dome-shaped structure, guarded by two men in suits. Before she could move, a hand grabbed her shoulder. "Not here." A voice whispered. She turned. It was Roddy. "Thought you were dead," she whispered. "Almost was," he said. They staged it. He led her away, behind the ridge, into a dry culvert where he had a tent set up. Inside was a satellite comms unit, drone footage archives, and a physical map riddled with notes. "They're not just managing Diddy," he said. "They're using him." For what? To test how much reality the public can take before they break. Controlled exposure, manufactured leaks. They want to see how far they can push the truth before it collapses under its own weight. "But why keep him alive?" she asked. "Because he knows where all the bodies are. Buried. Literally. And if he talks, the tower falls." Roddy played a video on his tablet. It was security footage from inside the dome-shaped building. Diddy was tied to a chair. A woman in a lab coat asked him questions. Behind her, a man Julian Sachs watched silently. "What happens when the public stops believing anything at all?" the woman asked. Diddy laughed bitterly. "Then you win." Roddy paused the video. "They've been recording confessions, creating synthetic memory trails. If this goes live, it won't just end him. It'll fracture everything." Jaleesa took a breath. "I'm leaking it anyway." Roddy nodded. "Then we both died." "I died the day I opened that envelope." They left the culvert at midnight and sent the files through a chain of dummy servers. The story went live 3 hours later. Again, the world caught fire. This time it was too big to deny. World governments issued statements. Celebrities scrambled. Sachs, gone, vanished. The compound, burned down within 24 hours, no trace. And Diddy. There was one last video uploaded to an anonymous Vimeo account. It showed him, bruised, standing in front of a plain white wall. My name is Sean Combs. I have participated in things I can't undo. I have been used. I have used others. But this, what you are about to find out, this was never about me. It was always bigger. The screen flickered, then cut to black. No one has seen him since. Some believe he's in protective custody. Others say he's dead. Others say he's somewhere in South America, rebuilding from the ashes. But Jaleesa, she lives under another name now. And sometimes, when she walks past alleyways or sees unmarked black vans, she remembers Roddy's final words before they separated. Don't trust the silence. It's louder than the noise. And she knows. The Diddy case wasn't the end. It was the beginning. 3 weeks after the last video dropped, the world had started to move on. Attention spans shrank, news cycles spun, and people resumed scrolling past headlines that once made them gasp. Diddy memes returned, conspiracy theorists filled podcasts, and celebrities who once distanced themselves quietly started liking old photos again. But underground, the heat hadn't cooled. Jaleesa, still known to the world as Dana Knox, was living in a cottage, tucked in the Italian Alps, thanks to a forged Swiss passport Roddy secured for her. Snow muffled every sound, which was the point. There were no cameras, no microphones, no tech she hadn't stripped apart and reassembled herself. But one morning, there was a knock at her door. No one knocked. She stayed still. Then came a voice. I know you're in there. I'm not here to hurt you. She looked through the peephole. It wasn't Roddy. It was the housekeeper from Diddy's mansion. Her eyes were sunken. Her face looked older, haunted. I shouldn't be here, she said when Jaleesa opened the door. But you need to see this. From inside her coat, she pulled out a cracked iPhone and played a voicemail. It was Diddy's voice. I thought I could buy my way out, confess my way out. But they don't want truth. They want compliance. If you get this, I've been moved to Site 17. It's under the foundation, ironically, but not the kind you build houses on. This one buries people alive. Click. The message was dated 5 days ago. He's still alive, the housekeeper whispered, but not for long. Jaleesa's hands trembled. She made one call. Roddy. I told you, he said. The players change. The game doesn't. But he was already in motion. He'd been tracking pings from a satellite intercept program he'd never shut down. Site 17 wasn't just a metaphor, it was real. A decommissioned military facility in Nevada, supposedly sealed in 1998. But infrared scans showed heat signatures, movement, and heavy truck activity, especially at night. They had one shot. They rendezvoused at an old airstrip in Utah. Roddy arrived in a crop duster with jerry-rigged comms, dressed like a broke farmer. Jaleesa brought nothing but a flash drive, a burner phone, and a promise to herself she would not leave without. Diddy died at 3:14 a.m. They landed 6 miles from Site 17. The rest was on foot. It wasn't guarded like a fortress, it was worse. It was hidden in plain sight. From above, it looked like an abandoned solar farm. But underground, there were levels, steel corridors, surveillance so tight it would make the Pentagon blush. They slipped in during a scheduled delivery, dressed as maintenance contractors, armed with fake IDs and an EMP jammer. That gave them 12 minutes of blackout inside the security grid. They got to level B3. That's where they saw him. Diddy, shackled, emaciated, talking to himself in the dark. Jaleesa didn't cry. She didn't have time to. She knelt beside him. We're getting you out. He looked at her, unfocused. It's not done. Not yet. They recorded my memories. What? They took everything. Voices, faces, even things I didn't do. They built new stories out of my old life. They're going to release them, one at a time. Controlled leaks, justified destruction. I'm the rehearsal. For what? Roddy asked. Diddy looked at him with eyes that didn't blink. For replacing history. Sirens howled. Their 12 minutes were up. Roddy punched the door override. The walls turned red. They dragged Diddy into the shaft, into the elevator, back to the surface. But outside, 2 men were waiting. Not guards, not military. These men wore no badges, only suits, identical, clean. One of them smiled. You really think you've won? Roddy aimed. The man didn't flinch. Do it, he said, but it won't stop what's coming. Roddy fired. The man dropped. The other ran. They took Diddy to a hidden airstrip Roddy had stashed years ago. Barely a runway, but it worked. Within minutes, they were airborne. Jaleesa looked at Diddy in the back seat. What now? She asked. He looked out the window. They've already replaced me. Aversion, deepfakes, voice clones. Most people won't know the difference. Then what was the point? Roddy muttered. Diddy turned to face them. I had to tell someone before the curtain closed. And you were the last one still listening. They landed in Iceland. It's the last place the world saw Diddy. After that, he vanished. Again, some say he lives in a small cabin near the edge of a volcano, off-grid, speaking only in code to those who come knocking with the right phrase. Others believe he died on that plane, and everything after was smoke and mirrors. But sometimes, at 3 a.m., Jalisa logs onto her private server and finds new files uploaded. No sender, no source. Each one reveals another layer, another secret, another trap, and the final message he ever sent. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't an apology. It was a single sentence, written in a document labeled, "If you care to know the truth." The only thing more dangerous than the lie is the man who tells the whole story. Jalisa hadn't slept in 48 hours. Her eyes burned, her fingers twitched, but her mind raced like a machine. She sat in a makeshift data room in the basement of an Icelandic hostel, surrounded by 3 offline laptops, 2 terabyte drives, and a corkboard filled with red strings and pinned screenshots. She had started mapping everything, not just Diddy's trajectory, but the entire architecture of the machine behind him. She called it the labyrinth, because that's what it was. A maze of media, memory, manipulation, and monsters dressed like managers. Each node on her board led to something bigger. One line stretched from a 2007 nightclub brawl in Miami to a now-defunct tech firm in Estonia. Another tied a seemingly harmless breakfast interview Diddy once gave on MTV. To a confidential patent filed the same year under a holding company in Tel Aviv. The more she tracked, the more impossible it seemed. No one man could have built this, not even a mogul. Which meant, he didn't. He was the face, the proxy, the mask, the true machine. It had no name, but Roddy found a lead. He'd been working silent from a container-turned office in Greenland, connected only via ham radio. He called her in the middle of the night. "It's not just media," he said, his voice distorted by static. "It's memory architecture. They're not just rewriting stories. They're rewriting people." She paused. "You're saying?" "I'm saying Diddy was one of many. But the others weren't famous. They were useful. Judges, editors, scientists, influencers, all programmed to play parts." "Programmed," she repeated, "like mind control." Roddy hesitated. "Like behavioral loops embedded by synthetic environments, stimulus response engineering, memory editing via immersive recall therapy." She blinked. "Brainwashing. Not the old school kind. Not the cult stuff. This is digital hypnosis. Virtual reality that feels like life. Dreams that rewrite your core values. And the scariest part, most of them don't even know it happened." She felt the room tilt. Then Roddy said something that chilled her to her bones. "They tried it on me." Silence. "Before I left the agency," he continued, "I went through something they called calibration. They said it was just a test, just feedback training. But after that, I forgot 6 days of my life. Entire conversations gone." Loved this story? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new episode. Drop a heart in the comments and watch out for part 2.